The time is just gone 9:36 a.m. We continue with the broadcast this morning. Now, the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers South Africa, AMAL, in partnership with the United Ulama Council of South Africa, SANZEF, and OCAF, have now embarked on an initiative which is providing guidelines for non-profit organizations, NPOs, and public benefit organizations, PBOs, on legal tax and internal controls. Now, South Africa, we know we've got many NPOs and PBOs right across the entire country. And it is so important to understand the legal issues, the tax issues, and governance control of the PBOs and NPOs as well. And this is the reason why this initiative, together with AMAL and the other organizations, is going to be held on the 19th of February, that's this Saturday. And we're joined on the line now by Chartered Accountant Reza Amra. Reza, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother United. How are you doing this morning?
Alhamdulillah, very well, thanks. Jazakallah khairan so much, Brother Reza, for joining us this morning to tell us more. Now, before we get to the actual event and we're talking about guidelines to NPOs and PBOs, and we know that there are many right across the country, but it's important, it's very, very important to understand the legalities and also the tax implications for these organizations, Reza.
Gee, that's correct. As you rightly mentioned, there's organizations, across the length and breadth of South Africa. The last time we've seen stats that came out from the Department of Social Development, we were looking at easily about 250,000 registered non-profit organizations. And remember, that registration is even voluntary with the Department of Social Development. In all likelihood, that number is much higher because you have a number of smaller organizations, especially even in the Muslim community as well, where you have little associations, operating a masjid or a madrasa, for instance, that might be a registered organization, but not necessarily with the Department of Social Development. And what we find very frequently is that organizations, start off with a vision of serving humanity, for instance, by an individual who's passionate about a certain cause. But what happens very often is that the finance and legal aspect tends to actually fall behind the organization that evolves. And unfortunately, there's insufficient technical support to these organizations. Remember, the environment within which they operate is quite technical and highly regulated by government, and correctly so, because of the tax benefits that become available to registered organizations as well. So it can become quite complex. Furthermore, there's a general lack of knowledge and understanding of these benefits that could be available. Furthermore, there's a lot of misinformation and myths as well, which then results in a loss of money because of non-profit organizations not maximizing the tax benefits that are available to them. Furthermore, as we're aware, when it comes to budgets with non-profit organizations, they're always operating with limited funding. So unfortunately, they don't have the monies to go out and employ a full-time chartered accountant, for instance, or a highly qualified accountant or legal expert to come in and address all of these issues within the organization. So obviously, having looked at it from that perspective, that's where we've obviously come about with partners with AMAL, SANZEF, and OCAF as well, to say we need to obviously look at this. As organizations, we need to obviously be at the forefront of compliance. And I think this is where the checklist comes in to assist organizations to identify these various benefits that are available to them, unpacking the complexities that might be there for them.
Yes, in fact, Reza, I think I'm glad you quite mentioned, complex, because at the end of the day, one cannot fall foul. And also, I noticed you mentioned compliance, which is absolutely important. This is paramount. And we know, particularly when we're talking about the likes of SARS and the South African Revenue Service, they've upped their game as well. And it's important for us to understand these complexities. We know many of these PBOs or NPOs have been built over a period of time. And as a result of non-compliance or falling foul of the law and some of the legal issues that govern these organizations, the last thing we need is for them to get into, just put it simply, to get into trouble or fall foul with the likes of SARS, Brother Reza?
100%, that's correct. Sometimes we feel that because obviously it's a non-profit organization, we sort of fly under the radar when it comes to compliance and SARS not really monitoring or going after a non-profit organization. But over the years, we've seen a number of cases. Some of them have even gone to court, where SARS has taken or have taken non-profit organizations to court on a number of issues, whether it's VAT. We've even seen individuals who have claimed Section 18A deductions in their income tax returns, being taken to task because of incorrectly claiming these deductions from organizations that are actually not even 18A registered. And remember, sometimes we actually don't realize that you could actually face criminal prosecution as well. As a non-profit organization, you could be sitting, as the public officer or director, but for that non-compliance, you could also be criminally prosecuted.
Now, I see you've got two speakers. You've got Ridwan Khan, who is a CA, and we've also got Naeem Azwat, also a CA. And, you mentioned the checklist, and in terms of unpacking and providing guidelines to this checklist, and just looking at the event that is taking place on Saturday from 10 to 11:30, what can we expect? And also perhaps, just to provide us with an insight as to the speakers and what they are going to be bringing to the event on Saturday.
Okay. Ridwan Khan is one of the partners at our firm, Turning Point Chartered Accountants. We are a firm that specializes in the non-profit sector now. Working very closely with organizations across the country, multinational organizations as well, on various issues, which obviously gives us practical insight into some of the challenges faced by organizations. He is a tax specialist, having served as a senior manager at two of the big four audit firms as well. And then I think Naeem Azwat is well known across the fraternity, obviously, currently heading up the SAICA Eastern region as well. But very passionate about the non-profit sector, in terms of the work that both of them obviously have undertaken over the years. And with Ridwan Khan, we've undertaken a number of training initiatives and capacity building programs for non-profit organizations. But obviously the main objective of the event is to officially launch this checklist that's available for non-profit organizations. Now, with regard to the checklist, it would have been quite easy for us to have just disseminated information from a technical perspective and provide a set of rules and guidelines for non-profit organizations. But what we've done differently in this instance is that we've tried to make it as practical as possible. And it's in the form, if I could call it, a health check of your non-profit organization. We do understand that some of the individuals that might be obviously operating these organizations might not necessarily have a financial or legal background. So what we've done is we've taken out the technical jargon, from tax law as well, to make it as simple as possible in terms of it being a self-assessment with a simple checklist whereby an organization can go through this document and simply obviously introspect to assess it internally, whether they are actually adhering to the necessary rules and regulations as well. Furthermore, we've broken it up into different categories. So organizations can assess in terms of registrations, for instance, whether there's any specific registrations that they should have obviously gone ahead with and they haven't perhaps. General, obviously, rules and regulations for non-profit organizations, and then the legal aspect as well. So it has been broken down quite easily. Furthermore, what we've also done is that to each question, we've given guidance as to the background of that specific issue at hand in terms of the actual legislation, and simplified the language as well. So someone that's reading it, they can see, from where or which act this specific question has come about and why that question has actually been asked. But most importantly, I think, it's all well and good to have this information available. But critically, I think it has to be used as a roadmap for the organization going forward to firstly identify these risks of non-compliance or perhaps unclaimed tax benefits, and then to actually then put a plan in place whereby they can now start addressing and remedying this. I think that's quite important. Very frequently we find that there's so much information out there, but is it practical for an organization to implement in a simplified manner? And I think that's what we aim to achieve through the event, obviously, and the checklist itself.
Yes, and just as far as participation and attendance go, Specifically, who would you encourage to attend this event?
It would be open up to all stakeholders in the non-profit sector. Obviously, individuals that are involved operating a non-profit organization, whether it's in an executive capacity, management capacity, or even staff members of an organization. What we find very often is that within a non-profit organization, individuals wear multiple caps. Obviously, they don't have the budget, as we mentioned earlier on, to have specialists in each aspect. So you've got someone who's doing fundraising, but who's also doing the bookkeeping perhaps as well, and the payroll. So it's all rolled into one. So yes, any individual involved in the non-profit organization in any capacity, together with obviously accountants and attorneys that advise non-profit organizations, many of them obviously undertake work on a pro bono basis. And sometimes what we do find though that because it's undertaken on a pro bono basis, it can be a bit of an injustice to the organization in terms of are we giving them the correct advice. So it's quite important for us to be able to understand that. The non-profit sector is looked at as the third sector because being the non-profit sector, but it is highly specialized. So it's critical that we obviously, be able to disseminate the correct information to them when it comes to technical aspects such as this.
Yes. Now, this is taking place on Saturday. This is obviously Zoom, and I'm looking at the poster at this point in time. There is a Zoom link, and also for anybody wanting information or getting this link, who do they contact, Brother Reza?
You can contact the Amal offices. Their number is 031-207-3381. I'm just going to repeat that. The Amal offices at 031-207-3381. Alternatively, they could email Amal. The email address is info@amal.co.za. So just to repeat that, info@amal.co.za.
Well, Jazakallah khairan so much for that, Reza, and for sharing what you have with us this morning. And obviously, we will get that message out. And this is taking place this Saturday from 10 to 11:30 a.m. The cost is free. And once again, just to remind you, info@amal.co.za or 031-207-3381. We wish you all the best, Brother Reza. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is the Association of Muslim Accountants and Lawyers, Amal, in partnership with UXA, SANZEF, and OCAF, inviting you to the launch of their guidelines for non-profit organizations and public benefit organizations, taking place once again this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. via Zoom. The time is just gone 9:49. We're going to go for a break. We'll be back.